Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Israeli Defense Minister Shaul Mofaz has ordered the army to stop a policy of demolishing homes of Palestinians involved in attacks on Israelis. However, Israeli troops kept in place roadblocks ringing Palestinian towns in the West Bank as soldiers continued to restrict the movement of Palestinians. Palestinian workers and students were turned back at major checkpoints despite a de facto ceasefire. And Palestinian factions said they had a legitimate right to respond after troops killed 2 Palestinian activists. A rocket fired by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip landed in Gush Katif settlement block but caused no injuries. As the situation on the ground remained unchanged, Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed Qrea met U.S. General William Ward, Washington's newly appointed Middle East security coordinator. The talks came amid newly forged cooperation between the U.S. and the government of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. The two sides discussed ways of cooperation in order to rebuild Palestinian security institutions and enable them to take over the occupied territories, which Israel plans to withdraw from. It is Ward's second day of his first trip to the region, in which he is scheduled to meet Palestinian and Israeli security officials. The U.S. coordinator's responsibilities will include monitoring security commitments undertaken by both sides. Clearing a big hurdle for Prime Minister Ariel Sharon's plan to cede the occupied territory to Palestinians, Israel's parliament has approved compensation for settlers to be evacuated from Gaza after 2 days of fierce debate. Sharon pushed through the 59-40 vote with the help of dovish deputies inside and outside his coalition to override a mutiny in his right-wing Likud party and spiraling protests by extremist settlers. Sharon's cabinet is expected to vote on Sunday to authorize a start to evacuations, but he must get the budget passed by March 31st, or his government will fall automatically. The legislation provides for a total of $870 million in compensation payments per family, which would range from $200,000 to $500,000, depending on size of assets. Following the vote, Israel's 2 deputy premiers, Shimon Peres and Ehud Olmert, both expressed their support for the Gaza withdrawal. Middle East mediators see the Gaza pullout as a springboard towards peace negotiations whose prospects have brightened since the February 8th summit between Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. The United States has kept up the pressure on Syria after the assassination of former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri. While acknowledged they do not know who was to blame for Hariri's car bomb assassination, U.S. officials argued Syria's military presence and its political role were generally responsible for Lebanon's instability. President George W. Bush called on Damascus to adhere to a UN resolution and remove troops from Lebanon. To show its displeasure with Damascus, Washington has recalled its ambassador to Syria for urgent consultations. U.S. officials also said they were considering imposing new sanctions on Syria. Bush spoke at a ceremony after he picked John Negroponte, the U.S. ambassador to Iraq, for the new position of Director of National Intelligence.
First, we support the international investigation that will be going on to determine the killers of Mr. Hariri. We recalled our ambassador, which indicates that the relationship is not moving forward, that Syria is out of step with the progress being made in the greater Middle East, that democracy is on the move, and this is a country that isn't moving with the democratic movement. We expect them to adhere to 1559, UN Security Council Resolution 1559, which calls for the removal of troops from Lebanon, and we expect them to help free and fair elections to take place in Lebanon.
Bush also said Washington would stand by Israel if it was threatened by Iran.
A couple of points. One, we are a party to the talks or a party to the process as a result of being a member of the IAEA. We're on the IAEA board. Some 30-odd nations. So we've been very much involved with working with the Iranians and the world to achieve a goal that we share with the Europeans, and that is for Iran not to develop a nuclear weapon.
And in other news, Iraq's Shiite alliance has won a slim majority of seats in the country's new National Assembly. The Iraqi Electoral Commission said that based on final results from last month's historic election, the United Iraqi Alliance, a coalition of mainly Shiite Islamist religious parties, was allocated 140 seats in the 275-seat National Assembly. A combined Kurdish bloc, which polled the second highest number of votes in the January 30th ballot, won 75 seats, and the list led by interim Prime Minister Iyad Allawi got 40 seats. A two-thirds majority is required to approve the appointment of a president and two vice presidents, the next step in the electoral process. The Shiite Alliance and Kurdish bloc could together form such a majority and are expected to do so. However, leading figures have said the cabinet should include members of the Sunni Arab minority, many of whom did not vote. The United Nations, which was given the task of organizing the election, praised the first post-Saddam Hussein election as an immense success.
It has really been a privilege and an honor for the United Nations to have accompanied the Independent Electoral Commission in this very difficult but ultimately successful process. Transitional elections are by definition conducted under very difficult circumstances. However, in this case, we can say that the definition of difficult really exceeded all expectations. But the Iraqi people have shown the world